Is that my cue to begin?
It's
Ann?
it's all yours. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Ann Fisher, our moderator of today's two regulatory workshops. Good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick DeRay. I'm Chief of the Bureau of Automotive Repair, and I want to welcome all of you to the first of two public workshops that we are planning this morning, involving two provisions of AB 471, a bill that was introduced by Assembly Member Evan Lowe and was signed into law last year, took effect in January of this year. And the Bureau has been working diligently to work on regulations to implement the various provisions of that bill. This workshop, as well as the one that will follow at 11 a.m., are two of the provisions we want to get feedback on from our public and those attending today. It looks like we have already about 27 attendees, and hopefully more will be joining us. This particular workshop involving the ARD, or Automotive Repair Dealer Application Requirements, was a package we were working on prior to the bill's introduction last year and its eventual signing into law. We wanted to capture all of the application requirements in a regulation rather than having the application be incorporated by reference, as is traditionally done with all applications, not just with this Bureau, but many other regulatory programs, and then having to unnecessarily, but actually necessarily, update that application every time there was a change that needed to be made. We thought that things like the current governor could just be simply stated in a regulation rather than have to update the application itself, and other changes like that that happen periodically and require the updating of an application. So we were going to put all those requirements into a regulation. We were working on that at about the time that the governor introduced the bill, or excuse me, the Assembly Member Lowe introduced the bill. We felt like seeing that that bill might get signed into law, which it did. We decided to pull back on that because we saw some application requirements that were going to impact our regulation. And sure enough, they did. And the two major changes are now an email address is now required, as well as the license plate number for anyone doing mobile automotive repairs. So that's captured in this regulation and in the bill that we're modifying in our regulation package today. It also asks us to capture on an ARD application educational certifications of two varieties. One is a nationally recognized and industry accepted educational certification. So we'll try to capture that on the ARD application, as well as any Bureau approved educational certification that might not be nationally recognized or necessarily industry accepted, but might be something the Bureau might want to accept or approve of, and capture that on the application. The purpose of this, as it came to be known during the bill's progress to the legislature, is to eventually move all of this information to the Bureau's auto shop locator, so that a consumer looking up automotive repair services and shopping around for specific types of automotive repair or maintenance services can look at a shop and its educational certifications. Obviously, the thought is that someone who's invested in those that type of education of its employees or its ownership has gone through certain training, has put an investment into that kind of statement to be recognized as a quality shop in the state of California. And I think that bears a lot of value on a consumer's potential decision to make that decision to go to that shop. So we are looking to capture that as the bill requires in our ARD application. And here to tell us more about the various application requirements that are going to be captured in this regulation are Vincent Soma, who's with our licensing program, and Matthew Gibson, who is with the Bureau's executive office, having come from our field operations and enforcement division prior to his recent promotion last year to implement all things relating to this new bill, AB 471. So welcome, Vince. Take it away.
Thanks, Pat. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to be tackling the first part of this presentation, the first section of slides. Let's see. There we go. So the application is going to, pursuant to AB 471 and the amendments it made to 9884, we're going to be requiring the detailing information required on the ARD application as we go through this. We're going to be defining nationally recognized industry accepted educational certifications and establishing a process for training providers to have Bureau review and accept their certifications as approved educational certs. The ARD application specifically will require applicants to, first of all, pay the fee that's set forth in regulation. It's going to require the providing identifying information as follows: the email address, a license plate number, if it's a mobile repair dealer, provide ownership information such as the legal name of the applicant, the ownership structure of the applicant, and identification of individuals in control of the business. For LLCs to be members, corporations, it will be the corporate officers, partnerships to partners, and sole proprietorships, sole proprietors, so forth. And the application will also give the applicant the opportunity to provide BAR with any nationally recognized and industry accepted educational certifications that they may have, and any Bureau approved educational certifications that they may have, that the business and or its employees may have as well. The application is also going to provide for identification of whether or not the applicant qualifies for expedited application review, such as being a member of the United States Armed Forces and qualifying dependents, and then also refugees, asylees, and holders of special immigrant visas as defined in statute. We're also going to set a 12-month abandonment date for applications that are incomplete at that 12-month mark. That is, if we send a deficiency notice and we don't get the information we needed within that year, where the application will be abandoned and it will require submittal of a new application at that point. And then we're also going to be providing for applicants to have up to 14 days to notify BAR if there are any material changes to any information provided on the application. Changing corporate officers is an example that's already codified in regulation. That is an example. Address changes, any changes or expirations to certificates or educational, the nationally recognized certifications. And that was it for the licensing specific portion of the application updates. Matt will be taking over at this point to discuss the nationally recognized industry accepted educational certification piece now.
Thank you, Vince. Again, I'm Matthew Gibson. I'm the program manager in the Bureau's executive office, and I'll be covering the portions of this related to educational certifications. So as a result of AB 471, we had to come up with some definitions and processes in order to accept educational certificates or certifications. The first definition we came up with had to do with nationally recognized and industry accepted educational certifications, which means a diploma, certificate of completion or degree received after successful completion of and/or testing on automotive repair provided by any of the following: a vehicle manufacturer, the Inter-Industry Conference on Automotive Collision Repair, or ICAR, National Institute of Automotive Service Excellence, or ASE, an educational institution or trade school accredited by an accrediting agency recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. The other definition we had to come up with was Bureau Approved Educational Certificate, which means a certification issued after successful completion of training that has been evaluated and determined by the Bureau to be effective in educating the automotive repair industry on the diagnosis and repair of a motor vehicle, the Bureau's laws and regulations, or customer service related to automotive repair. This evaluation process allows the Bureau to accept certifications from training providers that are not listed in the definition for nationally recognized and industry accepted educational certifications. A training provider who wishes to have their certifications accepted as Bureau approved educational certifications shall provide the Bureau with information on the following evaluation criteria. So we need to know the length of time that the training provider has been providing the training, the training course content, and the number of individuals in California, in the California automotive repair industry that the training provider has had successfully complete the training. And the training provider has to permit the Bureau access to student attendance records for the purpose of authenticating certifications provided to the Bureau. And that is the conclusion of the PowerPoint presentation.
All right, thank you both, Vince and Matthew, for the presentation. These regulations are proposed regulations, draft regulations are posted on the Bureau's website, have been for more than 10 days. If you haven't seen them, those who are tuning in today, I encourage you to take a look at them. Not a lot of there's some substance there, but it's a pretty quick and easy read of that regulation package. Pretty straightforward though. So welcoming public comment at this time. We can open it up. Moderator, if you will, cover the instructions for participants to weigh in on our proposed regulation here.
Absolutely. So if you would like to make a public comment, you can look for, I'm opening up the Q&A option in WebEx to handle this. You'll see a question mark icon in the bottom right of your computer screen or behind the 3-dot other options if you're on a mobile device. You can, in the text box, type comment and click send. If you are not able to locate that, and it is just as easy, you can raise your hand. There's an icon next to your name in the panelist participant list, or there's a logo at the bottom of your screen or behind the 3-dot other options. So at this time, we have a request for comment from someone logged in as Jean Lopez. And Jean, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good morning, Jean.
Good morning. Sorry for that delay. Vince,
No
Matthew, thanks for your presentation. Good morning, Chief Dore. So there's a dozen questions, but I'll just make a couple of quick comments. I had an opportunity to speak with Jaime Ramos, and in San Diego, it's David
Winkowski.
Winkowski, thank you. And so the conversation was around the new or fairly new refrigerant 1234YF and some of the machines that are going out that are out in the industry right now. And we stumbled across one that didn't meet the J standards from the EPA. So I'm wondering if perhaps in part of this work that you're doing, that would be a consideration for noting that repairs need to have the correct standardized, if that's the right word, equipment. Because if you don't have certified equipment and you are providing a service for compensation, you get in some trouble there, right? So that thought came up to mind just because it happened yesterday, and David and Jaime were a great help, and we had conversations around that. The other thing that I think I should bring up is iCar and iCar notifications. I don't know how they collaborate, but iCar and insurance companies, if an insurance company has a requirement to be an iCar Gold Class business and that business falls out of certification, the insurance company is notified, like now. And so um, perhaps that's something that you could take a look at. If someone says, I'm a Gold Class business and I have platinum individuals, but they fall out of certification, how are you going to know that? And insurance companies definitely know that. So, that might be something that you can take a look at. And there's another organization, and I'm going to send your slide on becoming part of this program, which is Automotive Management Institute. They support the collision industry and the mechanical repair industry with a lot of different online training. And so that may be something that we can take a look at. And as I said, I'll send them on your information. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Gene. Just a quick response. It's certainly welcome. We, as the Bureau, welcome any input outside of this 1 hour that we've dedicated here this morning for comments. So any additional input you might have, that'd be great with respect to AMI or iCar. I don't know that this regulation is attempting to capture those who have been certified by iCar as a Gold Class business. It's only those who have gone through certain training and capturing whether that's been done or achieved by the automotive repair dealer and potentially their employees. So I'm not sure that it's looking to go into certifications and decertifications of an association or a group like iCar. And then the third comment, working back up the chain of your comments in reverse order, the equipment I think is more appropriate, and equipment requirements wouldn't necessarily be for this regulatory package. I think it's more for our, and we've been talking about a regulatory package to update our trade standards. Excuse me. Yeah, excuse me. Thank you. I'm almost had a brain pause there on what it was called. The trade standards for various repair scenarios. We do have a specific trade standard for air conditioning service and repair, and equipment requirements would be appropriate to address in that package. So I think people have told us that that trade standard that was adopted probably close to 15, 20 years ago is outdated. I can certainly appreciate that that might be the case. And so this request relating to the equipment requirements might more appropriately fall into a package that we've been discussing to update those trade standards as it relates specifically to air conditioning.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, and as it relates to iCar, so iCar has some welding qualifications, and they expire after 3 years. So that's another, a business could say, yeah, I'm a Gold Class business and I have certified welders. Well, they could have expired, and how would you know that? And if,
Right.
If they continue to say that they're, that they are gold class and they have platinum individuals, someone should know whether that is true or not. But that's something else down the road.
I believe in the regulation, the proposed regulation, we do allow a means to update that information, and obviously anything you supply that's
Okay.
false or misleading can certainly impact your
Right.
your registration and renewal of that registration. And we're certainly looking at ways to make that information as current as possible. That would registration renewal is once a year, so that would have to be accurately reported if something along the lines of the ICAR certification is no longer current or relevant for that automotive repair dealer. We're also looking to make it more real time, not necessarily having to wait for the registration renewal, such that you could. We've been discussing potentially having a portal for automotive repair dealers to update that information as soon as it becomes, as soon as there's a need to update that information, and not necessarily having to wait for the registration renewal cycle. Is that correct, Matt?
That is correct.
All right, so we have another request for comment from someone logged in as Jack Mullen off. I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. And you're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Welcome, Jack.
Matt.
Hi there.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. I do have just some comments and suggestions. I actually reviewed the text regulations. And so the first comment or suggestion is on the email address. I know that AB 471 required, one of the requirements was the email address, and the regulation text indicates that's on page 2. It says applicant's email address, if any. And so it sort of gives, it's not a requirement. If you don't have an email address, you don't have to put one in. And I don't think that was the intent of 471. I think the intent was to capture everyone's email address, all 35,000 ARDs, and new ARDs. It's just like an address or a telephone number. You've got to have an email address. It doesn't cost anything to have one. I think it's going to benefit the BAR in terms of communication. So I think that if any should be struck, and it should be required in the application. I don't know who that's directed to, Vince or Matt, but anyway, that's
All
my
of us.
comment. Okay.
We all wrote it down.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. The other comment was with regard to it's on.
I was going to scroll down to it, Jack. Hold on a second if I can.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you. It's on page 6.
Oh, well, then I should just do it this way, huh? Oh, your next comment's on page 6?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's with respect to the bureau, any changes. Gene mentioned with regard to the certifications, and if something changes, an expiration, or I don't know if ICAR changes from gold to, I think they have a platinum certification, but what if they change to a titanium one? Not really sure that the 14 days that are provided there would allow enough time for the shop maybe to change. I guess I'm just raising the issue: is 14 days enough with regard to the nationally recognized industry accepted certifications? Now, with regard to the other changes of ownership, the shop should know immediately when they change. But with regard to the changes to certification, sometimes there's a delay, right? I mean, the institution like ICAR or something may send notice that, hey, we've just changed, we're in the process of changing. By the time they receive it, it could be more than 14 days. So I don't know if there would be any objection to changing that to, I don't know, 30 days or more. So that would
Can I
be,
jump in here real quick, Jack? That was the point. If they've lost the certification, I think that's something we would want to capture here. But I mean, changing from gold to silver to platinum or whatever the different mineralogical terms that ICAR wants to use. I don't know if we were getting that deep into the weeds as far as the ICAR certifications and the, as again, it's nationally recognized and industry accepted. I think we were that would require some additional work to our regulation potentially, because I don't think it got that detailed. If I'm wrong, please correct me, Matt or anyone else.
well, I do think your regulations does capture that scenario. That was just my hypothetical, Pat,
Okay.
but it does talk about material. If there's a material change, and material is defined as a change to any.
Can I see that, Matt?
Yeah, it's on page 6.
Oh, material, and write of any material changes to the information. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
So
Okay.
material means, if you read D.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, and so there's a change. So again, I just made up that hypothetical, but if it changes from gold to, I don't know, titanium or kryptonite or whatever, that would be a change, and it would fall into your into this definition, in my opinion. But I mean,
Okay.
you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I read it.
Yeah, I just don't know that we were attempting to capture the different levels, but maybe we were. I don't know if that was our intention, or just to say that they had ICAR training.
Well, I think the original intent, Pat, was to the registrations are renewed annually, and that was the time to make the change, right? I mean, hey, they send an application, you fill it out. However, in this case, since now you're posting these nationally recognized certifications and advertising for the shop, essentially, right? You want to make sure that they're current, and that's fair.
Right.
But what I'm suggesting is 14 days enough for the shop to notify, and that was my point in this whole thing.
Okay.
So maybe
Well, we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, maybe 30 days plus or 60. I don't know, something that's reasonable, or maybe you say reasonable, but at least the concern there is that if a shop, something changes with regard to the shop, and they have an employee that is ASE, master tech, and they leave or whatever, they get terminated or something like that. This says that within 14 days you've got to tell the BAR, and if you don't, it's technically a violation. And of course, where I'm coming from. Oh, a violation, that means a citation and a fine. That's not what the intent here was. Okay.
What would be an advisable date or time frame in your mind?
Yeah.
Do you have a suggestion?
I threw out 30. I don't know if 30 is the right number. Is 45 the right number, or reasonable? Something that gives them more than 14 days. So
I got it.
I'm not set on anything. There may be other participants in the call that have other suggestions, but I just want to make sure that that was discussed.
Okay, and the only thing I was commenting on is the different flavors of ICAR training or certification, which then we have to go and explain what that means to the consumer. I just don't know, what is the difference between silver, gold, platinum, kryptonite, and beyond. I don't know. I mean, someone would have to go to the ICAR website to figure all that out. And is that what you're intending the Bureau to do here?
No,
I feel like the consumer is going to be, it's just going to, I don't know, the amount of effort and involvement on behalf of the Bureau to explain that, something that's a private decision to have all these different layers of certification. I just don't know that we're capable of being able to do that adequately. So I think we were just trying to capture ICAR's training and leave it at that, and then let someone go research that, meaning someone being a consumer.
Yeah, no, I don't think the intent was to be able to get into that specificity. I think it's upon. I mean, this is a notification to the consumer that, oh, they have this certification, and if the consumer wants to get more detail, what does this mean? They can do their research on, you know,
Okay.
Google or whatever you said. So I don't think it was intended. I don't think 471 was intended to get in that deep, Pat.
Step into it.
Yeah, but
Okay.
once you start getting the regulations and drafting the regulations, and like I said, you start talking about material and you have the language. Well, then you get, now we're getting into some, you know, into some detail, and that's why I just raised the issue. So at least when you're drafting the regulations, there's some consideration um, for you know, the timeline. That was my point in terms of the timeline. If any changes take place with regard to the certifications.
Okay. Additional comments?
Yeah, the last one, and maybe this applies to Vince, but in terms of the forms that will, I know you're trying to go online, a portal that will make it easy for shops to, you know, if there are changes, if there are any changes with their certificates or any other part, any requirements here, that it's easy. You just get online and you're able to do it. Is there uh, um, is that in place, or is that coming in place, or is that going to be tied into these regulations, or what's the process there?
That's not in place right now. We are working on, as you're well aware, we've talked about a modernization of our enforcement and licensing platforms, moving towards more of an online application process, which this would be very much tied to. That we're getting very close to letting a contract for the licensing portion of that, the development of that work, but that won't be completed until later this year.
Okay.
All of the work to move everything that's currently in paper form to a more online process. I think that's why we envisioned 14 days being with an online process, a little bit easier to update information. You don't have to send a piece of paper to the bureau, so on and so forth. And it would leave it within the control of the licensee to be able to update that record online if we had an online portal. But again, your comment about doing so within 14 days, and just someone maybe getting busy with other matters, other business affairs, forgets to do it within 14 days. I don't see a huge issue for us to move that to a 30-day time frame, for example. Anyway, so to answer your question, no, it's not. The contract hasn't been let yet. A lot of mapping of our current business processes and where we are currently and where we want to go has been done, but the development still will take place for most of the balance of this year.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Our next request for comment comes from someone logged in as Dave Kusa. Dave, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. And you're unmuted.
Can you hear me okay? Or am I?
Yep.
Yep,
Yeah.
thank you. So to build on Jack's comment at the 14-day or 30-day, as a shop owner, 30-day would be more than enough time. My bigger concern for shop owners would be that, you know, we would fill out the application annually, you know, check all the boxes or do it online, whichever the case may be, that, you know, I have, you know, ASE certified technicians, and then for some reason, you know, I lose that technician or technicians. I'm no longer having ASE certified technicians. I'm never going to remember to go back and change it, you know, until the annual renewal. So if there's a process for, you know, ongoing reminding that this exists and needs to be updated periodically as things change, or perhaps a one-time get out of jail free card that, oh shoot, you know, I forgot. You know, then after that, of course, you better remember. But you know, so maybe something in that vein. And again, 30 days would be fine, even if it's online. You know, 14 is fine too in my mind, but 30 is great. Your ICAR different levels of certification are kind of mirrored in ASE as well, with, you know, single certifications, master tech certifications, L class certification, so on and so forth. So not suggesting that we need to get into the minutia of those, but as you're considering how those regulations look surrounding iCar, you keep ASE in mind as well, that there's multiple levels of certification there as well. And then lastly, would we consider association membership such as ASCCA or IPA, CAA, other Cal ABC? Would we consider shops that are members of those state-recognized associations that would have, a code of ethics that the shop agrees to adhere to, so on and so forth, as a certification we could list on the website? And that would be the list of my comments. Thank you.
That's an interesting comment. I'm not necessarily against that. I'm not sure that the law opens the door for that, but that's an interesting one. I hadn't thought about that one. So Dave, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And our next request for comment comes from someone logged in as Joanna Johnson. Joanna, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. And you're unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Fantastic. Hi, Chief DeRay and Vince and Matt. Thanks for doing this. I represent the Automotive Oil Change Association, so that's basically the professional fast lube industry. And the question I have goes to the idea of Bureau approved training. So for the association, they have had preventative maintenance technician training for 3 decades. And I think that the way you have it set up just on its face here will work for them, will be fine for them to do an application. The one place it might get tricky is that there are several very large companies who have their own proprietary training, and that they've one in particular is 40 plus years of expert training, but they are intra-company training courses, and at least 2 of them have proprietary platforms. So in terms of showing the Bureau, walking the Bureau through, I think they'd actually be proud of it, to show you what they do, because it's really great training. But there may be some issue for them about the proprietary nature of it. They may want some assurance that, that information will stay with the bar.
Yeah.
I don't know
Makes
if
sense.
you've already thought that through.
I don't think we've gone to the level of that detail, but that's a valid comment, and certainly wouldn't want to eliminate that kind of training because of that issue. So I think we find a way to ensure that remains proprietary, that would only be housed within the Bureau, whatever assurances we could give to make sure that occurs.
Okay, and I'll
I'm
put
just
that
speaking
in.
off the cuff here, but that seems reasonable to me.
Okay, thank you, and I'll put that in writing too. We'll submit it. We'll submit it in writing. And another question I have about this is, now we still have a lot of preventative maintenance only facilities in California, and of course, since we all agreed to change the law several years ago, so they are considered automotive repair dealers, but they don't diagnose vehicles in the classic sense of automotive repair. So I just wanted to ask you about this, because the way you've described the training is, it needs to be able to show that, this provides expertise in diagnosis and repair. So if it's preventative maintenance only training, it won't go into the classic kind of diagnostics. So it would be only on the preventative maintenance side. For instance, one of the most obvious things that everybody does, if you see a frayed windshield wiper, because they inspect everything, they do the safety inspection. So you see a frayed windshield wiper, and you let the customer know this is frayed. Do you want another one? Is that considered diagnostic?
Sort of. I
Mhm.
think are you actually wanting, are you thinking that we should include the term preventative maintenance in the list of stuff that we would consider? As far as in the list right now, it says Bureau to be so effective in the educating of the automotive repair industry on diagnosis and repair of motor vehicle, comma, like preventative maintenance, comma, the Bureau's laws and regulations. Is that what you're thinking?
I'm thinking maybe either including, you could even just say, repair, including preventative maintenance. That would be fair, because of how the code is written now, because preventative maintenance is included under the definition of repair.
Yeah.
But I think that might help. I mean, it just might help the process, because I know you're going to have applicants that are, preventative maintenance specific, and that what they do will just be a little different, than what you're used to seeing for the other programs.
Well, I certainly applaud your interest in recognizing them with the change in the law that brought oil change and other preventative maintenance providers into the regulatory fold. What was that, a few years ago? You certainly don't want to leave them out in the cold now that we've brought them into the club, so to speak. So I think that's a valid point. I mean, I could arguably also say that, that there are diagnostic elements to what the services they're provided, but to the extent that someone is feeling that's reading and that doesn't include them, we wouldn't want that interpretation, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think we were intending to exclude them in this definition.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And I didn't think so, that you meant to exclude them. I just thought this would be a great opportunity to just clarify, and then just talk to you a little bit about how, in particular, the very large intra-company systems would have, this extensive training, but it's not the kind of thing that like anybody from the public would be able to sign up for, which is distinct, from AOCA. So I'm looking forward to see how this goes. And that's all of my questions, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome. Welcome those comments. Thank you.
And our next request for comment comes from someone logged in as Gallo, Cal ABC. I'm going to send your request to unmute. And you're unmuted.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, appreciate the presentation, and I did have some thoughts. First of all, on ASE, and to Jack's point on how do we really track the expirations and how much time do we give? And so just by way of background, ASE has quarterly testing periods, and they allow 90 days for the recertification. So that might be kind of a barometer to use, just as a suggestion, as to how much time you give somebody to prove that they have completed recertification once they expire. So that was just a thought on that. I did have a question on slide 6 and 7, and I guess more of a clarification. If we look at educational institutions or trade schools accredited, would it be in the best interest of those facilities to also do the first item on slide 7 and to have a BAR educational certification that they add to their curriculum that really kind of differentiates to not only just the standard on slide 6 for educational institutions, but to also have a BAR specific course that they have taught and provided a certification. Just something you might want to consider, because I think in many cases, I know educational institutions will have BAR come out and do Write It Right and other presentations, or at least they have in the past when I've worked with them. But it may be something to consider, just to give the business and the educational provider a notch up on saying, yeah, we not only are a national institution and recognized and accredited, but we also have a BAR approved educational certification program. Just a thought on that. On the thinking of the mechanics of a repair shop, and I think Gene Lopez brought up some really good points, as did others, when it comes to how do we know we know? And how do we get the shop to put the information in that's going to make it easier down the road to make sure that we not only have a copy of their certification, but the field in which the shop would enter all of that employee's information provides an opportunity for them to enter the expiration date and then attach a copy of either a picture or a document of that certification that validates that expiration date. That way, you know for sure when it's going to expire, and there's something in the shop information that they get, maybe something that triggers in their shop a reminder that, hey, you know what? John Gallo's out of certification. This was his expiration date. What's the latest update? Because the biggest issue we're going to deal with is expired certifications and shop turnover. And and turnover has been an industry issue for years. And we always had a standing comment that technicians are as loyal to you as the wheels on the toolbox and the back of their truck. You either treat them good, treat them right, and give them training and do what you need, or they're going to push that box out the door and they're down the road. So I think whatever we can do to help VAR set up the website and the registration for that, even to the point that maybe what you do as part of their ARD recertification and paying their renewal fee every year, they get a reminder. Are these folks still with you? And if so, please update your profile. That gets tied into their ARD expiration date. Those are my main recommendations and comments. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Johan. I appreciate those comments. One of them, the most recent, the last comment you made, kind of reminds me of a similar discussion we've been having with respect to Smog Check and Smog Check test and repair stations and the turnover. You're supposed to have an inspector, a licensed inspector, to do the test, and then as a test and repair station, you're supposed to have a licensed repair technician, and certainly the former is easier to get licensed as an inspector as opposed to the repair technician. We've seen some turnover in that regard, and some of the efforts to work with the test and repair industry to make sure that we address, certainly during the pandemic, where some of that hiring of licensed repair techs has been a challenge. We've had to be very tread carefully on how far we moved on things like that. Obviously, you don't want to, someone who's actively looking to replace a repair technician who has left the shop. Certainly don't want to pull the license and things like that, but we do work with the shops, and similarly in this vein, I think with this certification, we don't want to pull the certifications just because something's been expired and maybe someone else on the staff has that certification. I don't know that it was intended to recognize every employee who has that certification. I believe it was just, a minimum of one gets you in the door for that recognition. So I think we'll have to look at how to make this work for all of us. It's just kind of a reminder of a similar effort and experience that we're dealing with on the Smog Check with the Smog Check program.
And our next request from comment is from Kurt Hepler. And Kurt, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted. Kurt, we're not hearing your voice though.
Mm-hmm.
I heard someone.
Hello, Kurt.
Hello, Chief. Is that you?
Yes,
I can hear you very faintly.
Okay. I do apologize. Is that better?
I can hear you. I'm having to lean in a little closer to.
I do apologize. I'm unfamiliar with the scenario. I apologize for coming late to the party. Perhaps these questions has always been addressed. So I do apologize. Um, I just want to, just a couple questions for Mr. Gibson, if I could.
Absolutely.
It goes to the text itself, and again, these are questions that are more legal. They don't represent the wishes of my client. These are questions of my own. Page 2 of the regulations, subdivision D, right in the middle there.
Right here?
Yes, regarding the FEIN and the SSN. I believe section 30 of the Business and Professions Code was amended to recently allow somebody with a taxpayer identification number to apply as a sole proprietor or as an applicant without being a partnership. So I would just ask that section 30 be reviewed so that these regulations could be consistent with them. So that's my first comment.
Thank you.
Okay. The second one is more of a philosophical legal comment, if there is such a thing, I guess. And that is on the last page, starting off with page 8, starting with subdivision F. And so when we read subdivision F, it suggests that bad acts by a training provider shall result in the revocation of their approval by the Bureau. And then subdivision I'm sorry, seems to suggest that the Bureau is going to tell them of the revocation and give them a chance for reconsideration. And from a purely legal perspective and attendees and presenters, I don't know whether council has reviewed this, so I apologize. That is what we call in the legal realm a post deprivation remedy, meaning that you have your remedy after the right that you have been granted has been taken away. That's unusual in administrative law and unusual in occupational licensing. Even when you have a bad doctor, a bad dentist, you have the possibility of an interim suspension order, which is a modified hearing and a quick hearing to see if the license should be restricted or conditioned. Here we seem to have the fact that the Bureau revokes it without any pre-deprivation hearing, and then after the fact notifies the provider and then gives them remedy. So I don't know whether that is consistent with the current status of the California administrative law. So that's all I had to say. I do appreciate the presentation. I'm sorry I came to the party late, but those are my comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt.
And our last commenter is Jean Lopez. And Jean, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
First and last commenter.
Well, thank you very much for the notoriety. And I concur with Jack and Johan and David on their comments. I think perhaps Matt and Vince can go back to ICAR, and maybe it's David Robinette on the bag that you can ask these questions that currently, and Sidner's Collision Center with 13 locations, we have hired, transferred, or individuals have terminated their employment 45 times this year. And so that would mean that, in our 13 locations, there could have been several amendments to our team, right? And saying that this person has left and this person has joined us and so on. So the 14 days, and I am contradicting myself here now, maybe just an annual update, because that, and confirm with David Robinette, that is what ICAR requires. If we hire a new senior technician, the collision repair technician, that individual doesn't have any ICAR requirements until the following year that he was hired. and confirm that with David Robinette. But you see, my point is that the attrition rate, as that has been discussed, is very, very high. And for us to go in several times through the year to make changes would be a challenge. Thank you.
Yeah, Gene, I think that's an excellent comment. The only thing I'm wrestling with, and maybe others are, as well, are is this information, the intent was to, this is information that will be transported, used as part of our auto shop locator. So consumers use it to pick a shop. And if you're using that information, and the intent is to use that information to distinguish, represent shops, automotive repair dealers that have invested in training, as though that's, and I think we would all agree that that's a good thing, that a consumer would tend to favor a shop that's has invested in training of its employees, including the ownership. But the minute that information becomes outdated and you wait a year, it's almost falls in the category of false and misleading information being provided to the consumer, because they're being swayed to go to a shop that doesn't have that information anymore. That's why I think we weren't trying to get into the weeds too much about the level of certification that they might have from ICAR or another training provider, because that, keeping track of that as for the Bureau, is a lot. And that's why I was feeling like those kinds of changes might be getting too deep into this.
Yes.
We were just hoping to recognize the fact that they've had training, that the training is still current for at least one employee, and that we wouldn't try to capture too much information that is going to be a challenge for all of us, whether it's bar or the shop trying to do this on the fly as quickly as possible, so that they are keeping that information current. I think that's going to be a real challenge for us. But I think it's a comment that is an important one, and we need to think about. But I don't know the practicality of waiting a year. I also don't know about the practicality of trying to capture every bit of information relative to that certification from that training provider. So we'll have to kind of think about it. We walk away from today's workshop.
It's definitely a challenge, and you know, another challenge might be that maybe it needs to be more than one individual. It would be not unlikely that you have 6 technicians repairing vehicles and only one of them is certified. What are the other 5 doing to the car if they haven't been trained properly? So that might be a question that we look at as well. So
yeah, but then you also have the shop owner who does everything. They're the
that's true too.
A one-person band, you know. So
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with that. It's just they only have one employee.
Agreed. Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Yep.
And there are no further requests for public comment.
Okay. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. I went through that quickly because we have another regulatory workshop in about a minute. So I want to thank everyone for attending this workshop. If there are significant changes, we potentially might have another regulatory workshop, but otherwise I think most of this is probably doable. And then posting a regulation with and noticing it to all of our interested parties. You'll have, obviously, once that's done, an opportunity to comment on the formal through the formal process, which is a 45-day public comment period once the regulations have been filed and noticed with the Office of Administrative Law. So thank you all once again. Appreciate the comments. Very, very helpful. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.